All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our TALMUD Torah sponsors for Tuf Shin Pei Hey, 5785, the Tilson Family, for dedicating all of the Shur and Drashos this year as a zechus for besuros tovos for all of Am Yisroel. Our TALMUD Torah sponsors for the month of Cheshvan, Steve and Teri Czinn, in honor of the birth of their granddaughter Devorah Eliana Czinn, and in memory of Dr. Zinn's father Bunim Tzvi Ben Chaim. Shmuel Robyn Korobkin, in zechus for refuah sheleima for Benyamin Chaim Pesach ben Musha Chana, and the Yahrzeit of Pesa Mira Bas Chaim. Dr. Moshe and Ellen Gavant, in memory of Dr. Gavant's parents, Yakov, Meir ben Moshe, Leib, and Shena Bas Abba, Zichronam Livracha. Sorry, 1 second. And Dr. Behzad and Yemina Soufer of Los Angeles, in the merit of a refuah sheleima for Esther Bracha Bas Chaya. And a late-breaking Daf Yomi sponsorship, Tali and Michelle Strum, in honor of a grandson born just a few hours ago in Eretz Yisrael to their children Yal and Akiva Strum. Mazel tov, should be zocheh lachnisa b'visa sh'am avinu bizmano, and legad l'torah, l'chuppah, or l'maisim tovim. Mazel tov, mazel tov. Well, so with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today. A really great daf ahead of us today. Today's daf is Kuf Mem Ches 148, and we are picking up in Meir Hashem on Kuf Mem Zayin Amud Beis 147b. And we're actually picking up. Let's pick up 3 lines down from the top. I'm embarrassed to say that, but let's just do it. Sometimes it's about getting over your own embarrassment and just getting the job done. So 3 lines down from the top. So let's remember again, just to reorient ourselves a little bit. So remember again, we were talking about the concept of matna shchimira, right? So we've been talking in general just about the concept or the ability of a shchimira to convey property on his deathbed without any formal kinyanim. So the Gemara now, interestingly enough, as much as we've been talking about this for such a long time, now the Gemara decides to kind of get into the mechanics of it and understand, is this a din d'oraisa or a din d'rabanan? So remember again, on Amud Aleph, all of the opinions that we spoke about, I really adopted the approach that this is a matana d'oraisa. Comes along Rava in the name of Rav Nachman and said that it is a d'rabanan. D'rabanan. So now the Gemara says 3 lines down. The Mir Rav Nachman Haki. Did Rav Nachman really say that matnas shchivnira is a din d'rabanan? After all, look at the following. It's an interesting case. V'ha'omer Rav Nachman avagav damer Shmuel. Even though Shmuel said the following: Hamocher shtarchov lechavero b'chazer u'machlo machol b'afilu yoresh mochal. So first, let's analyze this halach in the abstract. I lend Reuven $1,000. I decide to sell the note to Shimon. Okay, I'm allowed to do that in order. I'm assigning collection of the debt. The halacha is, this is fascinating, the halacha is, I, the lender, still have the ability to forgive or to cancel the debt even after I've sold it. Now you say to yourself, how can you do that? I've sold the note. So the way halacha understands selling of a loan is as follows. What I've done is, I've assigned the right of collection to Shimon, but I don't have the ability to make Shimon the lender. See, when you lend someone money, that is a very specific relationship that is created between lender and borrower. That relationship, the relationship is non-assignable. Collection is assignable. So when I sell the note to Shimon, I'm selling Shimon the right to collect, but I always retain my identity as the lender, and because of that, I have the ability to cancel the note, to forgive the debt, even after I've sold it. Now again, Shimon could then have a taina on me, obviously, right? Shimon could come back to me and say, 1 second, you sold me the right of collection, I paid for that, now you cancel, but that's a separate discussion. The point is, even after selling the debt, I have the ability to cancel it. Not only that, if I pass away, my yoresh, the person, my son, who inherits me, who also inherits the debt. Remember again, my son essentially inherits my position as a lender, has the ability to cancel the debt as well. Okay, so the Bafil Yoresh Mochel, supposed to say, so now listen to this, Moda Shmuel, Shem Nasla Matla Shchibira, De'eno Yachal Machlo. Very interesting. Yet Shmuel holds. So again, Shmuel says, this is the halacha, right? And by the way, this actually is halacha l'maisa. I lend money to Shimon. I lend $1,000 to Reuven. I then sell the note to Shimon. Halacha l'maisa. I, the lender, could still cancel the note even after I sold it. Right? Not only that, if I pass away, my son inherits my lender kite, right? My ability to go ahead and the fact that I'm the lender, my son could also go ahead and cancel it afterwards. Okay, now it comes along Shmuel, and Shmuel says, however, Matna Shchimira. Let's say Shchimira is on his deathbed, right? So Shchimira went ahead and lent $1,000 to Ruvain, and now Shchimira goes there and says, I hereby assign this note to Shimon. He gives him matana. I'm giving this note as matana to Shimon. De'inu yachal l'machal. Shmuel agrees that halacha l'maisa in that case, Shchimira cannot then decide to go ahead and be mochel. Right? Fasting. So Shchimira on his deathbed, so after Shchimira assigned the debt to Shimon, Shchimira can't say, you know what? I hereby forgive the debt. So what does that Sherbo say? What that shows you is the matana, the gift of a Shchimira, to a certain degree, is even stronger than any other gift. Not technically, is stronger than any other gift, or is even stronger than a sale. Right? Because normally, with a healthy lender, if the lender sells the note to another party, the lender still retains the ability to cancel the debt. In a matna shchimira, once he gifts it to someone, he can no longer cancel it. Now the Gemara says, let's analyze this. See if you hold that matnas shchimira is a doraisa, right? That is a doraisa. The mechanism is a doraisa mechanism. So I understand then why, after the shchimira gifts the note to someone else, he can't forgive it. He can't forgive it because this is a doraisa gift. Ella, the Gemara says, Ella I amrit drabanani amai eni yachol imchol. But if halacha l'maisa matna shchimira is din drabanan, so I understand why can't the shchimira lender, why can't he be mochel the debt even after he gifts it to someone else? To which the Gemara says, you're right. In reality, in a shel Torah, really, the halacha follows Rafa, the name of Rav Nachman. The concept of a matna shchimira ultimately again is idrabanan. It is not minat Torah. In a shel Torah, vasua kishel Torah. So we'll say, so in fact, the ability of a shchimira to go ahead and convey property without any formal kinyanim is not a din dorais, it's a din drabanan. But how did the Rabbanon fashion this halacha? They endowed it with the strength of a doraisa. Now, by the way, we see this in many different areas of halacha. Right? The ability, the concept of matna shchimira, the concept of a drabanan to be endowed with biblical-like strength. This, by the way, is a separate concept. Let's say, if you think about it, one of the interesting anomalies of rabbinic law, right? From where do the rabbis have the ability to legislate law? Why can they do that? Baruch gave 613 mitzvahs. Why do Chazal have the right to make new laws? Why? It's a din d'oraisa. Right? Torah says, do not veer from what they being Chazal, the rabbis, tell you to do right or left. So the Torah itself endowed the Rabbanon to make halachas, which, by the way, creates a fascinating little bit of almost like halacha kanali, which essentially tells you that every Rabbanon essentially is a daraisa. So there's a lot of literature about this, about how exactly you understand this, but not a topic for today. But we're far enough behind the Daf Yomi cycle, right? But fascinating to point out that sometimes you see this concept that you can have a din d'Rabbanan that is endowed with biblical-like strength. That is possible. Chazal could do that, first of all, because Chazal could fashion halacha, but because their power to legislate halacha comes from the Torah, they have the ability to make rabbinic legislation that has biblical-like strength. So this is fascinating. So the Gemara says over here that halacha l'maisa, the concept that a shchiv mira could go ahead and convey ownership of things from his deathbed without the use of any formal kinyanim, that is a din d'Rabbanan. Now, by the way, how could the Rabbanan go ahead and make a halacha like that? Because remember, again, there's another concept, which is hefker based in hefker. Chazal, the Rabbanan have control over all monetary matters. So they could decide what works how. So they decided a shchiv mira has the ability to convey ownership of property without any formal kinyanim. Once again, why did they do that? Going back to Amud Aleph, because they felt this is in the best interest of the mental well-being of the shchiv mira. The yishuv hadas, the inner quietude that comes from knowing that he could pretty much set up his estate however he wants from his deathbed, right? He doesn't need his estate attorney. He doesn't need any abatement. But he could just verbalize it and it happens. That helps him in a difficult time, and Chazal doesn't exacerbate an already difficult situation. But Chazal endowed this halacha with biblical-like strength. And therefore, again, coming full circle, that's why if a shchiv mira goes ahead and assigns a note, assigns a debt, he can't cancel it. There is a full assignment over there. Fully removes himself from any interest in that, and even as the lender, he can't cancel it. Take a look at Rashbam for just a moment. V'asal k'shel Torah. Fine. Well, so by the way, there's one other piece over here which I want to mention, which Reb Shalom brought up to me after the shir, which I didn't think about it in yesterday's shir, but actually the Gemara is going to talk about it today into tomorrow, which is, remember, according to the opinions that hold that matna shchiv mira is a da'oraisa. So remember again, where did they learn it from? Fascinating enough, they learned it from psukim of Yerusha, of inheritance. But shchiv mira is not Yerusha. It's matana. So how are you learning matana from Musha? So just hold on to that, because that's going to focus very important over here also. We're going to see that the truth is, even if you hold that shchiv mira is a din drabanan, which seems to be the conclusion of the Gemara over here, which we'll see in just a little bit, that everyone agrees conceptually it is a derivative of inheritance law. We're going to accept that premise. We're going to get to that more explicitly in just a little bit. Okay, so let's go back there. Amar Rava. So we'll say, so therefore again, the Gemara is suggesting over here, this seems to be the conclusion of the Gemara, that matna shchiv mira is a din d'Rabbanan, but ultimately endowed with biblical strength. Amar Rava. So we'll say, so by the way, I'll just mention, it's a good time to do this now, the Rambam writes in Hilchos Zechiya Umatana, Perek Yud Halacha Beis, the Rambam writes, it's a much longer Rambam, but he says, Umatnas shchiv mira, af al pi shehi midivreim, Asu osa kishel Torah. So that's what Rambam paskins. We pass like Rav Nachman that Allah matna shchiv mira is a din d'Rabbanan, but endowed with biblical like strength. Now he says, listen to what he writes. Uki'ilu kanab mamon shebishtam min haTorah v'yigil liyadov lo nishar liyarish bo kinyan lefichach eno mochel. I will say, so we're going to see that halacha l'maisa. Again, this is how we paskin. Like shemira din d'Rabbanan, but endowed with biblical like strength. Good. Now, we're going to get into a little bit more of some of the technical details of matna shchiv mira. Here we go. It says the Gemara. It says Amar Rav Nachman shchiv mira she'amar yider ploni bebayis zeh yochol ploni peros dekel zeh lo amar klum. So this is interesting. It says shchiv mira says, if he's on his deathbed, obviously shchiv mira, he says, let Ruvain live in this house, or let Ruvain eat the fruits of this tree. The Gemara says, this is a meaningless gift. The conveyance does not work. Lo amar klum, ad sheyomar tnu bayis zeh leploni v'yider bo. What shchiv mira could say is, give this house to Ruvain and let him live there, or tnu dekel zeh leploni v'yochal perosav, or give the fruit, or give the tree, right? Give the palm tree to Ruvain and let him consume the fruit. Now what's the logic over here? In order, the Gemara is highlighting over here is, in order for matna shchiv mira to work, the shchiv mira has to give something of substance, something tangible. The problem with giving someone the right to live somewhere, the right to dwell, is not a tangible right. Not a tangible right. Similarly, conveyance of produce, he's talking about produce that doesn't yet exist. This is Davar Shalal Baliolam. So conveyance of produce that's not yet on the trees also is meaningless. So there's an interesting connection, an interesting detail over here, that matna shchiv mira only works if shchiv mira is conveying something that is absolutely physically tangible. The Gemara says, L'meimra, the Savra Nachman, Milsa the Isei Bebari Isei B'shchiv mira, the Lesei Bebari Lesei B'shchiv mira. So what do you see from here? Then Rav Nachman's model, a shchiv mira's conveyance is modeled after a healthy, normal person's, regular person's conveyance. In other words, whatever you could convey as a bari, as a healthy person, you could convey as a shchiv mira. So we'll say, so this is very important. The only difference between the matana of a shchiv mira and the matana of a normal, healthy person is what? Is kinyan. Right? So in other words, a shchiv mira can't convey anything that a regular person can't convey. Right? So from a conveyance perspective, it's the same. The only difference is the mechanism. A shchiv mira doesn't need kinyanim. But in terms of what you could convey, whatever a bari, a regular healthy person could do, a shchiv mira could do. And conversely, whatever a bari can't do, shchiv mira can't do as well. So a bari, same thing. Right? A healthy person can say, I'm hereby being makne you the right to dwell in this house. What is that? What is that? What are you conveying to me? In other words, remember, I was say, so let's say we're going to use a kinyan. What physical item is being conveyed? The answer is nothing. I hereby convey to you future produce. Okay? What are you conveying to me? There's nothing, there has to be something tangible to convey. So the same way that a bari can't do this, a shchiv mira can't do this. The Gemara says, so you're telling me then that a matna shchiv mira has to mirror the gift of a regular healthy person. Whatever works by a healthy person works by a shchiv mira. I've hamar of Amrav Nachman. Yet Rav Sani Rav Nachman at top of Kuf Mem Ches 148a. Shchimra Shamer Tnu Hava Asi Leploni Hava Asa Leploni V'Afal Gav Delese Bebari. Rav said, but we see that it's not true because look at the following case. Rav Sani Rav Nachman. That's what a Shchimra who says, "Give my debt to Ploni." So again, Shchimra lent $1,000 to Ruvain, and then Shchimra says, "Give this debt." Right? I hereby assign this debt to Shimon. It works. It works. Even though such a concept does not apply to a bari. A bari can't just simply say, right? So again, if I lent money to Ruvain and now I want to assign the debt to Shimon, I can't just say, okay, the debt is hereby assigned to Shimon. So you see from here that Allah Shchimra can do things that a bari can't do. Take a look at the Rashbam. The Rashbam says, "Hava asi l'ploni tar Rashbam." He says, "Mamon shechayiv li ploni b'milva al peh ani nosin l'ploni v'yifreim." So we'll say this is now an important detail over here. What are we talking about? A verbal loan. A verbal loan. You see, if a loan is in writing, there is a way to convey it. How do you convey it? Give over the shtar. Right? So in other words, if I lent $1,000 to Ruvain and I want to assign this loan to Shimon, no problem. It's actually very simple. Give the document to Shimon. Because now, again, that document represents the vehicle of collection. So that works just fine. The case over here is, I lent money to Ruvain. It's a milva al peh. I lent him $1,000 and it's just a verbal transaction. So the halacha is by a shchimira. So mom shechayv ploni b'milva al peh ani nosin l'ploni v'yifreim lo halova v'mkomi niskayim advarim utehava asal l'ploni v'afagav debebari leisei de'eni yochel lahaknos lechavera milva al peh dehalva nitna. Delotzad nitna ve'in kigin tofes ela b'davar shu be'en. So Moshe said this is incredibly important. Kinyanim only work with tangible items. So therefore, if I went ahead and I lent Ruben $1,000, a verbal transaction, there's no shtar, I can't convey that to Shimon. There's no way for me to convey it to Shimon because there's nothing physical to convey over here. Yet, interestingly enough, a Shchiv Mira can do this. A Shchiv Mira lent Ruben $1,000, and now Shchiv Mira wants to assign the collection of that debt to Shimon. He has the ability to say, I hereby assign this debt to Shimon, and it works. So from here you see that a Shchiv Mira can do things that a bari can't do. To which the Gemara says, no. Rav Papa Amar, Hoil v'yoresh yarsha. Rav Papa says this is different because since a Yoresh will inherit this, it's fundamentally different. What does that mean? Take a look at the Rashbam, almost right across in the Rashbam. Umishani choyel v'Yoresh yarsho luzu hamilva ki'ilu birshusohi farmina lekamon matnas shimera kirusha shavi rabanon hilchach kevan di'ise birusha ise b'matnas shimera. Oh, so both I see here it is. By the way, we're going to see it in tomorrow's daf. So the Gemara says it's different over here. Why? Because since if the shchimera dies, his son inherits this loan, meaning even though it was a verbal transaction, the son will still inherit the right to collect his father's loan. Since it is in the framework of Yerusha, therefore it's also in the framework of Matnas Shchiv Mira. Why? Because the Gemara says the ability of a Shchiv Mira to go ahead and convey property is based on the halachos of Yerusha. Well, again, we don't know how, we kind of know how it is because the psukim that the Gemara brought up are psukim of Yerusha, but we'll see a little bit more in depth how that works. Therefore, the Gemara wants to suggest that essentially anything that works out Yerusha works out Matnas Shchiv Mira. So therefore, because this debt is an inheritable debt, if Shchiv Mira dies and doesn't convey ownership, his son inherits the debt, so because it's subject to Yerusha, therefore it works out Matnas Shchiv Mira as well. Okay, Rav Acha Bereid Rav Ika Amar, no. Halva Isababari. That's not true, by the way. This concept works by a healthy person as well. In other words, this whole shaila came up because we're assuming that what a Shchiv Mira could do, a healthy person can't do. Right? So a Shchiv Mira could assign a verbal loan. Shchiv Mira is on his deathbed. Shchiv Mira lent $1,000 to Ruvain. Shchiv Mira could say, I hereby assign this debt to Shimon. And we assume that such a concept does not work by a bari. The Gemara says, yes, it does. It does work by a bari. Where does it work by a bari? Here we go. Rafuna Amarav. Dam Rafuna Amarav. First name of Rav. Mana li biadecha tuneu leploni. Supposed to listen to this. So Rav Huna says the name of Rav. I say like this. I lent Ruvain $1,000. So Ruvain owes me $1,000. I say to Ruvain, go ahead and pay back the money to Shimon. Pevek to Shimon. The Gemara says it works as long as b'maimud shlashtan. So we'll say this is the famous concept of maimud shlashtan. Maimud shlashtan says that if you have lender, borrower, an intended now recipient, third party all standing together, lender could convey collection of the loan to the third party as long as all three parties are assembled. Again, why that is, and we're not going to get into it right now, but again, that's called the concept of maimud shlashtan. So you see from here, and this would appear to work even in a case of milva alpa, even ultimately again in a case of where there's just a verbal loan without any document. So you see from here that halacha l'maisa, this concept does apply by a bari as well. So we'll say, so therefore again, the Gemara's premise that in order for a shchiv mira to do something, the transaction has to be accomplishable by a bari as well. Just the only difference is the shchiv mira can do it without the kinyanim. But according to what the Gemara seems to be saying over here, is that a shchiv mira can never do something that a healthy person couldn't do. So if a transaction wouldn't work under normal circumstances, it's not going to work by a shchiv mira either. So right, so I was like, it's interesting. This is a fine point. A shchiv mira's transactional strength is no greater than a regular person. In other words, whatever a regular person could accomplish, shchiv mira could accomplish. Just the difference is a shchiv mira doesn't need formal kinyanim to accomplish it. But if something is transactionally impossible for a regular person, it's transactionally impossible for a shchiv mira as well. So most specifically, the same way that a regular person cannot convey something that is not tangible, a shchiv mira can't do it either. Okay, fascinating. Yibailu, some more questions about this. Yibailu, dekel la'echad upirasav la'acher mahu. So it's an interesting case over here. So let's say shchiv mira decides to convey, he has a palm tree, and he decides to convey the fruit of the tree to one person, the tree to Ruvain, and the fruit to Shimon. Now, what's the issue over here? So remember again, we just got finished saying that halacha l'maisa, conveyance of fruit is complicated. Why is it complicated? Because presumably we're talking about over here where fruit doesn't yet exist. So therefore, again, it's a davar shalab al olam. So does this type of conveyance work where he's giving the tree to one and the fruit to another? Now take a look at the Rashbam for just a moment. We're not going to do the whole thing, but just the beginning. You buy a little deka la'achad. Is the mukmi Leib bari ubalo dienos? If you skip a little bit down, he says, V'al karchin, it's the first wide line. V'al karchin b'shchimira mukminon, v'amasnisin kai diktani b'shchimira shir karka kolshu matanasa matano. V'boiluhu im nasan deka la'adam echad v'nimlach v'chazar v'nasa perosav la'acher parminu la'kaman. So okay, so let's actually go to the Pasha Pshat over here. So the Pasha Pshat over here is kind of following up what we were saying before. If you give the tree to one person and the fruit to another person, what's the halacha? Mi shir makom peri, olo shir. So I'll say, so here's the interesting shaila with this. I understand that conveyance of fruit doesn't work, right? Why? Because it's a davar shalab ali olam. But maybe when shchiv mira conveys fruit, what is he really conveying? This is interesting. What is he really conveying? Maybe also like a part of the branch where the fruit is going to be attached. Now that's physical, right? That is tangible, and that's here right now. So maybe that's the conveyance. And therefore, again, such a conveyance should work. Emtim salomar liachar lo havishir la'atzmo chutz mepirosav mahu. However, again, supposed to say, so let's say you'll say, no, that's not how it works. In other words, when shchiv mira gives the tree to Ruvain and the fruit to Shimon, what is he conveying to Shimon? Just the fruit, no part of the tree, and therefore such a conveyance is going to be flawed. What happens in a different kind of case? Let's say shchiv mira goes ahead and says, I'm hereby conveying the tree to Ruvain, but I'm withholding the fruit for myself. So what is that? In other words, do we say that when he holds back the fruit for himself, he's holding back a piece of the tree for himself as well? Amar Rav Nachman, Imtim Salamar Deka La'achad Uperosav La'achar Lo Havishir Makom Peri. So maybe when shchiv mira conveys the tree to Ruvain and the fruit to Shimon, that's where he's not giving Shimon any part of the tree; he's just giving him fruit. However, Deka La'achad B'Shir Perosav Lefanov Shir Makom Peri. But maybe when shchiv mira gives the tree to Ruvain but retains the fruit for himself, maybe shchiv mira does retain part of the tree for himself. Why? My taima. Both say this is profound. Kol legabe nafshei ba'ayin yafet mishayer. Why did I both say? Because in any transaction I'm withholding something for myself, if you count on one thing it is, I'm going to be generous for me. I'm going to be generous for me. And therefore, when I go ahead and I retain the fruit, what am I doing? I'm retaining part of the tree for myself as well. So maybe when I'm conveying to someone else, right? When Shemira conveys to someone else, he's giving Shimon the fruit and no part of the tree. But the Shemira is retaining ultimately again the fruit for himself. There's no question that what? He's retaining part of the tree for himself as well. Kol legabe nafshe ba'ayin yafa mishayah. Anytime you're retaining something for yourself, you're ayin yafa, you're generous for yourself. So I just want to point out something very interesting over here, and this is really quite I think a fascinating human dynamic. What do Chazal mean when they go ahead and they espouse something like this? Because it's interesting how you find sometimes like competing motifs. Like Rabbi Akiva said, kol mocher ba'ayin yafa mocher. Whenever you go out and you sell, you always sell with the spirit of generosity, right? Right? You always want to give more, and yet here again the Gemara is saying that when you're retaining something for yourself, you're looking out for yourself. So we'll say, I think it's interesting. I think what Chazal are telling us, and this is, I think, very important in general in interpersonal dynamics. People do things that serve their own interests. And that's not a bad statement. It's just a true statement. At the end of the day, a person has to look out for themselves. And therefore, by definition, almost by default, sometimes without even thinking about it. When a person engages in something, a person asks themselves one simple question, which is, what's in it for me? And again, I must say, sometimes you say this and it sounds like so cynical and so sarcastic. It's not. Deep down, remember again, the strongest human instinct is self-preservation. And self-preservation manifests itself in many different ways. And at the end of the day, and by the way, it's not a bad thing because this also fuels a lot of personalistic advancement. Same thing even in our ruchnius. Right? We do this all the time in our ruchnius. Right? I'm going to do something. I ask myself, what's in it for me? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And by the way, this goes in all different directions. Like Chazal say, right? When a person sins, Ein adam chote velo lo. There's no such thing as like altruistic sin. I'm just going to do it because, it's important. I want other people not to feel bad when they sin, so therefore if they see me sinning, I'm going to, hey, why do I commit averos? I want something. Why do I do mitzvahs? I want something. Why do I learn Torah? I want to, and by the way, to want something out of ruchnius could be, I want reward in the next world, I want reward in this world, I want the gishmak of feeling good from ruchnius, right? I want to feel good and this is incredibly important because we know this in our human interactions, that everybody wants to get something out of whatever it is that they're doing, which is beautiful, because if you could acknowledge and embrace that, then if you want people to help, you have to somehow highlight how it's beneficial for them to help. People will do things as long as they see it. Now again, are there altruistic people who will do stuff for absolutely no self-interest? Absolutely. Sometimes it's hard to gather a mezumin of those people, but lemaisa, right? But lemaisa, they do it, and that's why when you stumble upon people like that, you're like, wow, you have no self-interest, right? So I just want to point out, the self-interest is not a bad thing. It's an thing that stems from that most basic instinct of self-preservation. There are certain dynamics, there are certain interpersonal dynamics, if you just understand it, you could utilize it to your benefit. If you want people to do things, if you need people to do things, you need ultimately to understand, you need to make them understand how it benefits them. If it benefits them, you'll be able to onboard them. If not, if you're lucky to have some purely altruistic people, maybe, but chances are not. Incredible. And we'll say, then we'll move on. The Moshe understands this. This is why there is so much discussion in the Torah about schar. There is, right? About reward. Hashem says, right? If you follow my mitzvahs. And then we'll say, what does the Torah do? The Torah launches into an exhaustive discussion about material reward. Why? Leave that out. Baruch Hu understands it also. The harder the ask, that Barbanel says, why is it that, we really have to go on, why is it, this is a disaster, right? Why is it so much Torah, so little time? Why, should have scheduled the 5:50. Why is it that the Torah says, why is there arichos yomim, by honoring parents, right? So the Barbanel says so beautifully, he says, you know why? Because honoring parents in the right way will literally suck the life out of you. It literally will deplete you of your emotional resources, of your physical resources. It could literally, Baruch Hu says, I promise, I got your back. I got your back. Whatever you give to your parents, and sometimes, I will say, we all know this, especially, sometimes it's difficult, especially when a person is that sandwich generation and a person is children and parents, and literally a person feels like, I can't do this. Like, it's literally draining me from everything. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I promise, I got it. And I promise, whatever you give, I will give back to you. Now, come on, why don't you say, but that's your parents. It's your parents. They did so much for you. Because people are people. At the end of the day, every child reaches that, maybe not every child, most children reach that moment where they're like, you know what, I don't think I could do this. I don't think I could do this and still remain normal. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I promise, take care of them, and I will take care of you. It's so even HaKadosh Baruch Hu understands the dynamic, and he says, "Okay, I got you. You're a human being. So I'm telling you, there's something in it for you. You will not lose. You will be taken care of, and not just in this world, not just in the next world, but in this world as well." Incredible. All right, let's go back there. Says the Gemara. So again, he says we have this same discussion, but because it's interesting enough. So Rish Lakish said as follows: I sell my house to Reuven, and I say, Reuven, I'm selling you the house, but I'm keeping the rooftop. Now, I will say, diyuta is an enclosed rooftop. Now, enclosed rooftop, that's prime real estate, right? An enclosed rooftop, right? So now I'm selling you my property, but I'm keeping the enclosed rooftop. Now, watch this. So the Gemara says, diyuta shal yaron shalo. Fine, so no problem. I could do that, right? In other words, I could sell my house to Reuven and keep the rooftop to myself. So the Gemara says as follows. That's straightforward. See, Bailu, I'm a base. So the Gemara says as follows. Can't catch a break over here. Tomorrow we're good. So the Gemara says as follows. Okay, so let's see now. Watch this case. Same question that we just had before, just framing it a little bit different. So let's say I go like this. I have a house. I say, Reuven, I'm selling you the house. Shimon, selling you rooftop terrace. So the Gemara says, Mi havi shir or lo. Did I go ahead and withhold anything for Shimon? And I want to point out over here, this is not a matna shchimira, right? This is not a matna shchimira. This ultimately, this is a mat, the Rashman points out over here, this is a matnas bari. This is a regular gift. Now, what's the shiloh over here? So now watch this. In general, there are three sets of rights over here. There's the domicile right, the house, there's the rooftop, and then there's airspace. Right? There's airspace into the chutzner. Now, normally when I owned everything, so I had all three of those rights. So generally, the person who has the house has the rights. So the shaila is over here as follows. But in this case, I sold the house to Reuven, and I sold the rooftop to Shimon. So did I withhold the airspace rights for Shimon, rooftop owner, or do the airspace rights not belong to Shimon, only belong to Reuven? That's the shaila over here. So we'll say it's the same shaila as we had before, just applied differently. Beforehand, it was Shchimira goes ahead and gives the palm tree to Reuven and gives the produce to Shimon. So our shaila was, does he withhold some of the tree, the area of the branches where the fruit will go, and give that to Shimon or not? That was our shaila. So over here, same idea, but it's not a shchimira. I'm selling my house to Reuven, selling the rooftop terrace to Shimon. Do I withhold some of the airspace rights for Shimon or not? So the Gemara says, second line from the top, 148b, if at the end of the day we say that lemaisa again lo havishir, so we say no. In general, when you sell the house to Reuven and I sell the rooftop to Shimon doesn't get airspace rights. But just take a quick look at the Rashbam for just a moment. Top Rashbam, he says over here, ibari lehu bayis laechad b'matnas bari v'diyuta laechad havi makom shir mi'ika lahai bal diyuta shir makom b'chaser lohosas zizin o lo. So we'll say, here's the shiloh. The shiloh over here is when I sell the rooftop terrace to Shimon, does Shimon have rights in the airspace of the chutzner or not? And so they'll have a shir lachrin fight. So now the Gemara says, Amarava, Imtin Somar Bais La'echa V'Diyuta La'echa Lo Have a Shir Chutz Midiyuta Mahu. Okay, so let's say normally we would say that when I sell the house to Ruvain and I sell the rooftop terrace to Shimon, so again, Shimon only gets the terrace, he doesn't get any airspace rights. What happens if in a different case, I sell the house to Ruvain and I retain the rooftop terrace for myself? For myself. I'm not gifting it to anyone. I'm retaining it for me. What's the halacha there? So the Gemara says, Mahu. Amar Rav Nachman, imtim somar bayis le'echad v'dut le'echad lo havishir, chutz midyuka havishir, v'ali b'dirav zivid. So we'll say, so again, even if you want to say that normally when I sell the house to Reuven and I sell the rooftop terrace to Shimon, I don't withhold any airspace rights for Shimon. But maybe when I keep the diuta, when I keep the rooftop terrace for myself, I do retain some airspace rights. The Amar, first wide line, She'im, Ratzala Hotzi Bazizin, Motzi. Because Rav Zavid says, when I sell the house to Reuven, but I keep the rooftop terrace for myself, what's the halacha? I retain airspace rights for myself. For myself. So what do you see from here? Alma, Kevan Deshir Diyuta, Makom Zizin Nami Shir. So we'll say, what do you see from here? This is very interesting. What you see from here is the following paradigm. When I sell something to someone else, I don't necessarily go ahead and withhold any additional rights for them other than the actual item that I sold to them. Conversely, when I withhold for myself, what do? I give myself maximum benefit, which makes sense, right? So again, let's go with the house model because I think it's even a little bit easier because it's not shlemira. I have a home, I'm selling my home. I sell the house to Reuven and I sell the rooftop terrace to Shimon. Now, if you're Shimon, what you're wondering is, okay, does that rooftop terrace come with airspace rights? I say, now again, I don't know, Reuven, Shimon wants to hang a clothesline and the clothesline extends off the roof. He's a classy guy, right? So extends off the roof. So does he have airspace rights or not? So the pashtus of the Gemara is saying is no. No, what did you buy? You bought a rooftop terrace. Now again, obviously the terrace will come with some rooftop rights, right? Where do those rooftop rights go? They go up, right? They go up. They just don't go across into the chatzar. But you don't have anything more than a rooftop terrace. Yet, interestingly enough, if I have the same case, but in this case, I sold the house to Reuven and retained the terrace for myself, the Gemara seems to understand, which makes sense. I provide myself with maximum benefit. That's maximum benefit. The Gemara says, "Hakanami kevanami chutzei perosav makom pir sheri." So it says machlokes whether or not to actually include this line or not, whether or not this line. But we'll just read it. So it would appear the same case applies to the tree. That although normally, if I sell the tree to Reuven or I gift the tree to Reuven, or the Shemira gives the tree to Reuven and the peiros to Shimon, that halacha l'maisa, again, Shimon is just getting peiros. He's not getting any part of the tree. Yet, in the same case, if I retain the fruits for myself, I will get part of the branch. Okay, let's go weiter. Amar Rav Yosef bar Yomi, Amar Rav Nachman. Shemira. Okay, let's go. Shemira. Shekasav kol nechasav la'acherim. So we'll say, now listen to this. So Shemira writes all of his property to us. So we'll say, just want to point out something else. Remember, one of the interesting distinctions that we saw in the Mishnah, was when is something called the Matan Shechina? When is something governed by the halachos of a Shemira gift? When you give away all of your property. Right? Because when a person is giving all of his property, that shows that he feels he's going to die, and therefore he's giving away everything. The moment that you begin to retain stuff, then again, that's not really called the Matan Shechina. Because if a person is keeping property, what does that show? That it sounds like he's leveraging. He's like leveraging his risk over here a little bit. Like maybe I'll die, maybe I won't die. Right? So then that changes the reality over here. Now we're going to delve into that just a little bit. So Shemira. So Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Nachman. Shemira shekasav kol nechasav la'achirim. Shemira. Let's say, but I just want to point out. Just I was thinking about this because it's so fascinating. This idea that a shemira is more powerful than a regular healthy person. If you think about it, right? Now, as much as transactionally, a shemira can't do anything that a regular person can't do, but nevertheless, kinyanically, right? A shemira is stronger than a regular person. I want to say, if you think about it, it's fascinating because you would think if someone were to ask you, who's stronger, a shemira or a bari? You would say, a bari, of course. But you see that in halacha, that's not true. And I was saying hashkaf, I think also that Chazal are trying to teach us as follows. Sometimes in life, like we think, if we don't have all of our abilities, whatever those abilities may be, physical abilities, emotional abilities, financial abilities, that were compromised in what we could accomplish in life. And the reality is, it's not true. It's not true. The power of the Jew is the ability sometimes to even transcend whatever limitations there are and be able to accomplish. That's like the metaphorical meaning of sheleima. Here, this guy is on his deathbed, and what could he do? He could move worlds. Right? You have to imagine the ability to change the entire financial landscape of his family just by gifting, by moving, by this, by that. He can move assets all over the place. And Lamaisa, he's on his deathbed. No matter what your limitations, right? Because we all have limitations, right? And we all have certain handicaps. And we think that those are the very things that keep us from accomplishing the things we want to accomplish. The obligation of the Yid is to transcend, is to move past, to say, yes, the limitation is definitely creates difficulty. Limitation creates difficulty, but limitation does not create impossibility. If the sheleima could accomplish more than the bari, then that becomes the metaphor for how we live our lives as well. Just an aside. So the Gemara goes weiter. So the Gemara says as follows. So sheleima shekasav kol mechasav lacherim. Rowan. So here's what we look at. Rowan. In the mechalek mace kanakulan. So look at the Rashbam for just a moment. The Rashbam says this house. Ibn mechalek shemishah rishona shizul lechalik hayu bedaita lechalik kol mechasav lo shir leklum. So Moshe, now here's what's interesting. So now let's say the following case. Sheleima is on his deathbed. Well, obviously, right? Sheleima is giving out his estate. Now both say now. Here's what's fascinating. Sheleima is giving away his property now. The issue is, he gave away, let's say he has 10 parcels of land. So he gave away parcel 1, right? And parcel 2, parcel 3, and then he died. So he died. So what's the problem now? So you're both saying, what's the problem? The problem is, so technically speaking, he gave away some of his property, and he retained other property. So what's the halacha in such a situation like that? It's not a matna sheleima, right? It's not a matna sheleima. So it's governed by a separate set of halachas. So the problem just is, he died in the... See, up until now, we've almost been focusing on like a sheleima who just gives away everything at once. But what if a sheleima is dividing up his estate, but he dies while he's gifting away the property? So what do you do? So the Gemara says, we have to kind of look at the mindset of the sheleima. So in other words, if it's clear to us that the sheleima is liquidating his estate, that's what he's doing. He's gifting away his estate before he dies, and it's clear to us that that's his intention, then ultimately, again, kanu kulan. Amad chozer bekulan. So we'll say the reason why this is important is because like this. So let's say he goes in and he gives away parcel A, parcel 1, parcel 2, parcel 3. But there's 7 other parcels that he didn't get the chance to. So if he died, okay, the gifts are a gift. That's not really the shaila. What's the bigger shaila, What's the bigger shaila? If he recovers, right? If he recovers. Now, again, so the shaila is, now, that we don't want his recovery to sound like a downer, like Baruch Hashem, that's a good thing, right? But l'maisa, the shaila is, what's the status of the first 3 parcels? So remember again, if they're a matna sheleima, so we established in the Mishnah, that every matna sheleima is effectively like what? A gift with a t'nai. What's the t'nai? This is your gift if I die. So obviously now, if it's a matna sheleima, so l'maisa again, they have to return it. But if it's not a matna sheleima, which is a regular gift, then what? They get to keep it. Now, you see the difficulty in this case? The difficulty in this case is the sheleima didn't go ahead and convey everything. So the shaila is, what is that? So the Gemara says, it's a din in his mindset. If it's clear that he's liquidating his estate, right, but he just didn't get around to do everything, so the Maisa, if he dies, the gift is a gift. And if he recovers, so it's clear that it was a matna sheleima. Therefore, it was given out tonight that he died. He didn't die, and therefore, again, they have to return the property to him. Incredible. In Benimlach, I will say, but again, if when the sheleima is going ahead and dividing up his estate, meaning again, so we see him, he's on his deathbed, and it's not clear to us that he plans on divesting himself from everything. In other words, he's kind of just going through his portfolio and he says, oh, you know what, I'd like to give this to Ruvain. But again, we don't see any mindset that he plans on liquidation of the estate. Then mace, kanakulam, then obviously still, if he dies, the gifted properties remain. But ultimately, amad, eino chozer ela ba'acharon. So this is fascinating. If he recovers, the only gift he's able to reclaim ultimately, again, is the last gift. is the last gift, right? Why? Because Lamaisa, the earlier gifts, ultimately, again, we're done with the intent. We're done when they were still under the intention of retaining assets. The last gift is the one that we could say maybe his intention was unsure, and therefore Allah Lamaisa, that's the one that's made out tonight. Take a look at the Rashbam. The Rashbam says, "Ela ba'achron bilvad lo havi beishir," because again, by the last gift means the last piece of property. If you got around to gifting away the last piece of property, so that's the final gift. That's the one that could be reckoned as a matnas shchivmira. But the rest of them, there was this ambiguity. Because again, he didn't divest himself of the entire estate. So the other ones, the matnas shchivmira, not a matnas shchivmira, so therefore we look at them as ultimately again as a regular matana. As a regular matana, even if he recovers, they still stand. Only the last one is looked at as a matnas shchivmira. Okay, fascinating. So the Gemara says as follows: V'dilma iyuni kama ayin v'hadar yoiv. But one second, maybe in this case of Nimlach, he's not really, in other words, he's not really thinking about whether or not he should give away all his property. He's going to give away all his property. But rather, he's just contemplating, like, what I should give to it. In other words, don't interpret the pause as him not being sure if he wants to give away his property. Maybe the pause is just like, I'm not sure what I want to do with what. The Gemara says, Dilma, Iyuni kama ayin v'hadu yav, stamei de shchimira meidak daig v'hadu yav. So we'll say in general, this is fascinating. The way a shchimira works is generally the way a man shchimira works is generally, just Gemara is basing this just on fact. The way shchimira works is, first he decides what he wants to give, all his entire estate, and then he executes. Really, there's a shchimira. A shchimira is a person on his deathbed. Because he's on his deathbed, what doesn't he know? How much time he has. So the one thing he doesn't really have the luxury of is like deciding, you know what, okay, I'll do this today, I'll get to this tomorrow. So for the way shchimira works is, let's say, by the way, not a bad mindset. The shchimira mindset is not a bad mindset to live life with, right? In other words, there is no delaying of anything because I don't know. So the shchimira works, the shchimira already has a plan, and therefore, again, he thinks about the plan, and then he executes. And when he executes at once because he does not know if he has time. Okay. Amr Vachbar min Yomi, Amr Nachman. Shchimira, shekasav kol nechasav lacher, v'amad eino chozer. So let's listen to this. A shchimira who went ahead and gave away all of his property to others, and then he recovered. Eino chozer. He cannot go ahead and reclaim the property. Why? Chayshina is fascinating. That seems to fly in the face of what we just said, right? Because we always said, if a shchimira gives away all of his property, and halacha l'maisa again then recovers, gift of a shchimira is like a gift al t'nai, and therefore should be able to recover it. But in this case, the Gemara says, Rav Acha bar min Yomi says, Rav Nachman, he can't recover the property. Why not? Chayshinan shamiyesh lo nechasim in medina acheres. Interesting. What are we concerned about? Maybe he has some overseas property. And because he has overseas property, therefore, again, really, he didn't gift away everything. He's still retaining something for himself. And therefore, again, this is considered to be like a regular matana. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, again, he cannot reclaim it. Ve'alamas nisin diktani, lo shir karka kolshu, in matanasu kayames, heichin mishkachasla. So we'll say, 1 second, what do you do in the Mishnah, right? The Mishnah said the shimra is gifting all of his property. So why don't you have to be concerned that maybe he has some overseas property? It's where the case in the Mishnah is where the shchimira himself said, I'm hereby giving away all of my property. So the shchimira is making the declaration that he's giving away all of his property. So if he says all of my property, we take that at face value. If he doesn't say all of my property, Rav Nachman suggests we have to be concerned that maybe there's some overseas property. Okay, Ma'abar Rav Ashi Amar, the muchsak de leslanba. Or we're talking about a case where Allah so we know that he doesn't have any property, any other property. Bailahu, Chazar b'mikzas, Hami Chazara b'kula, Olo. So we'll say now a very interesting case here. So the Gemara says, Chazar b'mikzas. Now what's this case? Take a look at the Rashbam. The Rashbam says, Ibayluhu Chazar b'mikzas, Shchimra shakasav kol nechasav la'echad, v'chazar ba b'mikzas, v'nason shuv la'acher. Shayacha la'asos king, karin datiki, v'atas datiki. So we're going to see something very interesting. A Shchimira has the ability to change his mind. Right? So let's say Shchimira says, I hereby gift my property to Ruvain. He has the ability to go ahead and change his mind and say, you know what, no, I'm giving it to Shimon. We saw this before. Daitiki. Daitiki is that deathbed, that deathbed will. He has the ability to change it. So what if he does a partial reneging? We'll say, let's stop over here for today. We'll pick up in Meir went to say Bailu tomorrow. Tremendous. We covered a tremendous amount of ground today. Excellent job, everyone. Tomorrow is a short daf. We'll be all caught up in Meir by tomorrow. Shkoyach. All right, Chevron on Zoom. Have a wonderful day. Jerry, it looks like you're going to get some Gishmei Bracha today. So it looks like the background in the sky with Yerushalayim. Wow. Incredible. Ira also. Beautiful. What a backdrop. Couldn't make a better screensaver than that. It's beautiful. I'll be zocheh to join you one day. All right. Shkoyach, everyone. Have a great day. Good morning.